Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. My son died. He perished in a hotel fire. That day, my firefighter husband also came for the rescue. Yet he was busy saving his first love and her child next door to us. Before my son passed, he asked me, "Dad's a hero saving so many people. Why didn't he save us?" I had no answer. At the funeral, I called Henry. He brushed me off, saying, "Lucy and her son are burned and in the hospital. Can you stop being jealous at the wrong time?" Then he hung up. I sat in my wheelchair, staring at my son's headstone and my own burned scars, knowing our marriage was truly over. "Dad, I'm here." Nick covered his nose and mouth. "Don't talk." My son and I realized the fire when it was already big, so we took cover in the room. My husband Henry, a firefighter, was leading the rescue team that day. When my son and I saw him from upstairs, we felt hope arrive. I had sent him the hotel address and room number while we were traveling. But Henry went past our room and headed straight next door to save Lucy and her son. My son couldn't hold it in any longer, crying out, "Mom, Aunt Lucy is here too. Dad only cares about them. Is he going to ignore us again? Mom, I can't breathe well. It's so uncomfortable." The room was thick with smoke. He was only 5, barely holding on. I wrapped a wet towel for him to breathe through and rushed us to the door. "Henry, Nick's not going to make it. Please save us," I begged. "Just this once, couldn't he turn back for us?" Henry walked past our door, and I screamed for him, my voice tearing through me, but he didn't even pause. Amidst the blazing fire, all I could hear was him comforting Lucy. "Don't worry, Lucy. With me here, you and the child will be fine." The smoke clouded my mind. I thought to cover my son's ears, but it was too late. Tears welled in his eyes, his gaze losing focus. "Dad, why doesn't he ever notice me? I've been calling so loudly. Mom, I'm sorry I can't stay with you anymore. In my next life, can you give me a different dad, please?" Nick's hand fell after that. My mind buzzed into a blank state. My chest felt like nails were being driven into it, pain overwhelming me. I mustered every ounce of strength to hold his small body tight, tears stinging my eyes. "Okay, Mommy will listen to you. Nick, don't sleep. Hang on a little longer, okay? Mommy will get you out." Black smoke engulfed us, and I couldn't even see Nick's face anymore. The floor was scorching, and so was the door. Flames greeted me, burning both Nick and me. My poor child, how painful it must have been. I tried desperately to extinguish the fire, but it wouldn't die down. Smoke was suffocating, fire blazing. I crawled since I couldn't walk. This corridor stretched on endlessly. In the end, other firefighters found us and got us to the hospital. Henry was with Lucy in the next room. Just like in the fire, with only a wall separating us, he didn't notice Nick and me at all. His heart only for his first love and her child. The doctor tried to take me for burn treatment. I refused, kneeling, begging them to save my son. He was just having a hard time and fell asleep. "Please save him." The doctor sighed, taking Nick into the emergency room. The defibrillator was used over and over, but his small body never opened his eyes again. The doctor said, "The child suffered a lot in the fire. Don't torture his body after death." Yes, my Nick feared pain. How would he handle it? Severely burned, I asked my brother to handle the funeral and start the divorce with Henry. The divorce papers were ready the day I got injured, and I signed them. But Henry didn't answer my calls, just like on the day of the fire. Slowly, I realized he blocked me again. When he was with Lucy, he blocked me if calls annoyed him, only unblocking me when he felt better. I endured this for 6 years, but now I just felt so tired and weary. My brother went to arrange Nick's funeral at the funeral home, leaving only a nurse to assist me. I asked the nurse to place me in a wheelchair, moving next door to find Henry. I couldn't take another second of this ridiculous marriage. The room next door was a private one too. My family is well off, and my job pays $20,000 a month. I don't need Henry's money. With his firefighter's pay, he could barely support our family, let alone this lavish single room for Lucy and her son. They came out of the fire with only some smoke stains on their faces and a few minor burns, yet Henry was frantic with worry. I thought of Nick's unrecognizable body, and my heart hurt so much I couldn't breathe. Yes, indeed, it's different when you love someone and when you don't. "Henry." I called his name, gritting my teeth. He turned, his smile fading, and he frowned instantly. Ella, who lets you in here? Get out. I was scared to upset people, wearing a cap and mask to hide my injuries. I was in a hospital gown, sitting in a wheelchair. It was clear enough that I was injured, but even then, Henry was blind to it. Afraid I'd disturb Lucy's recovery, Henry got up and pushed me out, not forgetting to warn me, Lucy and I are just friends. How many times must I explain? Her husband passed away. She has no one. Do you need to be this petty, causing a scene over this? I had heard those reprimands so much that my ears were calloused. Lucy didn't have a husband, yet she had Henry's care. I had a husband but lived like I didn't. The water pipes burst at home, soaking the downstairs ceiling. Henry, busy replacing light bulbs at Lucy's, told me not to rely on him so much. Eventually Larry helped me out. I got in a car accident while Henry was out helping Lucy pick out baby clothes. He told me not to stir up trouble. Nick had a high fever and convulsions one night, but Henry stayed with Lucy's scared son instead, telling me not to get jealous. Stuff like this happened more times than I can count. Right now, seeing Henry act so self-righteous makes my stomach churn. I can't even find the words to say to him. Once you sign the divorce papers, I'll leave and won't bother your little family. I handed him the divorce papers. Henry thought I was making a fuss again and didn't take them. He just impatiently, "Are you done yet? I'll go home when Lucy and Lucas are on good terms again." He always promised me that, but this time I had no hope left. "If you don't sign, I'll have the lawyer file a lawsuit." And 6 days later is Nick's funeral. I heard Lucy's voice inside. "Henry, it hurts. Don't worry, I'm coming." Henry replied with concern and urgency. He didn't even ask me a single word about Nick's funeral before going in. As I looked at the closed door, a penetrating pain hit my chest. I don't even remember how I got home, just that the pressure on my chest was suffocating. Up until the funeral, Henry didn't ask anything about Nick. Even as the service was about to start, the father hadn't shown up. People whispered, "Why isn't the dad here yet?" I heard he's at the hospital with a woman and her kid. She's his ex-girlfriend. But he can't skip his own child's funeral. That's too much. Everyone looked at me with pity, some trying to comfort me. Thinking of times Nick eagerly waited for his dad made my throat feel like it was full of thorns. I clenched my fists tightly, nails digging painfully into my palms, trying to suppress my anger. I needed to get through the farewell without ruining it. I told my brother, "Call Henry." He blocked me. Looking grim, my brother called Henry. The line quickly connected. "Henry, today is Nick's funeral. You Ella, enough with this. Lucy and her son were injured in a fire, and I'm helping them in the hospital. Please stop twisting everything into something filthy." Henry was angrier than me and hung up abruptly. No wonder when he heard Nick had passed, he had no reaction. He thought I was just making up drama. I've been accused by him many times, but this was the first time my body trembled with speechless rage. He shouted so loud that my brother overheard the conversation, snatching the phone and sending Henry a picture of Nick's death certificate. He called back, each word forced out like he was squeezing them from his throat. "Henry, do you see it clearly now? It's been a week since Nick passed, and you haven't even shown up once. Are you even human?" My brother spoke seriously enough that anyone with sense would know Nick's funeral wasn't a joke. I thought that when Henry found out, he'd apologize, feel regret and guilt. But he hung up without another word and didn't show up at all during the service. The whole time I was barely holding it together. I didn't know who came or what they said. I only knew I sat in a wheelchair, staring at Nick's smiling picture on the gravestone with his painful voice echoing, "Mom, it hurts a lot. Mom, didn't Dad remember we stayed in this room? Why does he only remember Auntie Lucy and Lucas in the next room?" I shouted really loud, "Why can't Dad hear me? Mom, are we going to die?" Those words played over and over like invisible threads binding me to a nightmare I couldn't escape. After the funeral, my brother rushed me to the emergency room. I had multiple burns, and the strain outside all day caused severe infection. I had a high fever, dizzy, couldn't tell dream from reality. I only vaguely recalled someone holding my hand, repeatedly saying, "Ella, don't sleep." Once my condition was stable, I got moved to a regular ward. 10 days later, Henry was beside my bed, looking scruffy with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his chin, not like himself at all. When he saw me awake, a hint of joy showed on his face. "Ella, you're finally awake." Seeing him brought all the pain, desperation, and suppression back, almost making my heart burst. I managed to sit up and slapped Henry hard across the face. How does he even have the nerve to show up here? Henry's face swelled immediately, and he looked at me with bitter eyes. I was wrong not to attend Nick's funeral. If you're upset, let it out. Don't hold it in. It's bad for your health. Lucy rushed forward, pale, and knelt in front of me. Her tears fell as soon as they welled up. "I'm sorry, ella. If you're mad, blame me. Lucas had a sudden heart issue that day and I panicked. Henry worried about us, so he missed Nick's funeral. It's my fault. You can hit me. Just don't divorce Henry because of me." Lucy held my hand to her face. She'd pulled stunts like this many times, leaving me at a loss. This time I slapped her hard and, still unsatisfied, hit her again. "You're such a lowlife. How could someone be this filthy? Why go after a taken man when there are plenty of single ones out there? Do you only feel fulfilled stealing other women's men?" I was about to hit her a third time when Henry, furious, grabbed my hand. "Enough. I told you Lucy and I are just friends. She's a single mom with a child trying to manage on her own. And you insist on making it dirty." I yanked my hand away, didn't even bother to argue, just pointed at the door in disgust. "Get out. Ella, how can you treat Henry like this?" Lucy tried to keep talking. I grabbed whatever was nearby and threw it at both her and Henry. "Get out. Both of you get out." Henry looked at me with a complex expression but soon left, protecting Lucy. I used to feel sad seeing this, but now I'm just numb. I come from a wealthy family, and Henry is just a firefighter from a regular background. We weren't supposed to cross paths. It all started when my best friend got dumped, and we went out for drinks. The bar caught fire, and in my darkest moment, Henry found me and risked everything to get me out. He was handsome and saved my life. I was crazy about him. After confirming he was single, I pursued him for a while before he finally agreed to date me and even proposed. Henry is a gentle person. He smiles at everyone, always stays calm no matter how absurd the situation or people. At first glance he seems approachable, but the closer you get, the harder it is to truly know him. After we got married, Henry handed over his salary and took on all the house chores. Everyone said I married the perfect husband, but he was always polite, and intimacy felt more like a duty than love. There was always this invisible wall between us. I thought he treated everyone this way until the day Lucy returned from overseas after her divorce. That's when I saw Henry lose control for the first time. It was our anniversary, but he took the day off just to be with Lucy and didn't even come home that night. I later found out Lucy was his ex-girlfriend. They had been together since middle school for almost 10 years. They were really in love. Eventually, they had to separate because their parents didn't approve. Henry claimed he was just trying to help Lucy because being a single mom is hard. He swore he never did anything to betray me. I believed him. So I lost completely. I forgot that betrayal isn't just physical. After Henry left, he bombarded me with messages, each a long apology. I didn't even bother reading them. I blocked him and told my brother to fire Lucy. I didn't know she was Henry's ex. I just heard she was a single mom in the media industry, so I offered her a job at my company. Now I'm sure everyone's laughing at me. The day after Lucy was fired, Henry showed up. With a furrowed brow, he said, "You can be mad at me and fight with me. I can take it. But just because I'm helping Lucy a bit more, you shouldn't get her fired out of jealousy. You know she needs to earn a living for her son, right? Do you really want to push her over the edge?" I stared coldly at him. "It's my company. I can fire whoever I want. If you're not happy, go find a new job for your first love. I'm not just firing her. Every penny you spent on her during our marriage, I want it back. Understand? Lucy, I've been understanding, and what did it get me? She's practically stolen my husband." Henry's face darkened. "Ella, I'm telling you again, I've done nothing to betray you. She's just a friend to me now." I'm so sick of that line and his self-righteous attitude. I couldn't hold back my emotions. A friend more important than me and Nick? Nick's funeral was 10 days ago. If you cared even a little about us, you'd know Nick died in room 1217 right next to Lucy's. Nick called out for his dad, only to watch him violate rescue rules to save another woman and child instead. I'm not asking for you to favor me and Nick. You could have saved who you loved first, fine. But if you had bothered to ask if there were others in the room or not, told other firefighters the floor was clear, Nick wouldn't have died. I screamed at him, desperate to vent all my anger and sadness. Henry's face lost all its dissatisfaction and annoyance, leaving only pale despair. He opened his mouth in disbelief but couldn't make a sound, his eyes filled with pain and utter chaos. Henry's only ever shown this much emotion for Lucy and her son. Never before for Nick and me. This was no honor, only a hard slap of reality. Henry looked lost. I'm sorry. I didn't know you and Nick were there. I didn't do it on purpose. Reaching for me, his voice was shaky and filled with panic. I slapped his hand away. I told you our hotel room number and messages more than once. But you were too busy worrying about Lucy and her son, right? You even forgot Nick and I were on vacation. Henry turned ghostly pale, trembling as he scrolled through his phone. I loved sharing every bit of my life with him. It was mostly me talking. The night before Nick died, he wanted to video call his dad. But Henry was on a call with Lucy's son Lucas. He said Lucas didn't have a dad and needed his support. So he ignored Nick, who tried to call 3 times. To cheer Nick up, I suggested we make a video. Nick was happy as he talked to the camera, sharing the places we visited and excitedly inviting Henry to join us. Henry opened the video with trembling hands, his eyes red and tears streaming down his face as he held back sobs in his throat. I had never seen him look this shattered, and seeing him like this didn't bring me any joy, just a gut-wrenching pain. What good is his regret now? My Nick isn't coming back. Henry clutched his phone tightly, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry for what happened to Nick. It's my fault. If you hate me, I deserve it. But don't take it out on Lucy and Lucas. They didn't do anything wrong. I grabbed the nearest water cup and threw it at his head, my anger almost consuming me. Blood trickled down Henry's forehead. If you want to protect those you care about, Henry, you better make sure you have the ability to do so. Get out. I didn't want to speak another word to him. A man like him doesn't deserve to be Nick's father. The commotion in the room was loud enough that my brother Jack and Larry came in with the medical staff to get Henry out. I had just come out of the ICU. My body was weak, and with all this emotional turmoil I was feeling dizzy. My brother hadn't been to work for over 2 weeks now, and the workload had piled up. He told me to rest well and left Larry and the caretaker to look after me before rushing to the office. Larry, a friend of my brother's with a laid-back demeanor I never thought would become a lawyer, stunned us all when he did. I hired him for my divorce. Larry sat next to my hospital bed, grabbed an apple and took a bite. So what do you want to do? During our marriage, Henry spent all his earnings on Lucy and her son and even borrowed $20,000 from me. I want to recover what he spent on his mistress and divorce him. Also, Henry violated fire safety protocols, delaying Nick's rescue, leading to his death and my severe injury. I want to report him to his leaders. I can't move well, so I'm asking you, Larry, to help arrange it. I argued with Henry until I was dizzy, but my mind was especially clear. It's not about the money. I just want Henry and Lucy to be miserable. Plus, everyone on his team needs to know about the despicable things he's done so no one else becomes a victim of his selfishness. Larry agreed quickly and started preparing to recover the funds and file the lawsuit. That night, Henry showed up with a bandage on his head, carrying a thermos into the hospital room. I've taken a lot of leave recently, so I can't take more. Sorry for being late. You're in. And there's a lot you shouldn't eat, so I made something light and nutritious. Try it. Henry unpacked the food and poured some soup, acting like nothing happened. He has 10 days of annual leave a year, 9.5 of which he spends with Lucy's family, leaving the half-day for emergencies. I glanced at the food, it looked good. But the next second I overturned everything on the floor, soup included. You bring me a meal and expect me to drop the pursuit of the money you spent on your mistress? Henry looked at the food on the floor, his face turning ashen. Ella, can't you not speak so harshly? I'm clean with Lucy. That money was just a loan to her. I don't get why you're taking it out on her. I'd heard this kind of talk too many times and couldn't help but cough in anger. Henry fell silent and helped pat my back. Before Lucy, we were seen as the perfect couple. I wouldn't have had Nick otherwise. I don't know how things got this way between us. Henry sighed and softened his voice. You're weak. Can we not fight? You having a child should understand how hard things are for Lucy. She lost her job and making her repay now. How is that humane? Think about it. I realized some things could never be clear with him, and I didn't want to waste my breath. Don't want more injuries? Get out. Henry frowned. Lucy called him. Lucas couldn't sleep without him. He lost interest in arguing with me. Ella, you're upset now. Let's talk when you're calmer. Whenever Lucy caused trouble, instead of comforting me, Henry blamed me and told me to manage my emotions. He must have thought I'd eventually let things slide like before. But he didn't understand that when Nick died, we were done. I didn't want to stay in the hospital where Henry and Lucy could disturb my rest, and checked out the same night to go home. The next day, Henry couldn't reach me and asked mutual friends to check on me. You just survived a severe infection. Where'd you go if not the hospital? Henry's worried about you. I scoffed. Ask Henry if he's so worried. Why did he argue over his ex with me right after I left the ICU? And why, after less than 10 minutes in my room, did he rush to Lucy's? Don't even. I hung up, then mentioned Henry and Lucy in a group chat. Stop dragging me into your play. Enough with the charade. Are you too blind? Own it, Henry. Admit you like your ex. I might not be this disgusted. And Lucy, take note everyone. Watch your husbands or you might end up like me. No one said a word in the group. Everyone was probably buzzing about it privately. Henry texted me from a new number. You hate me, do what you want with me. But stop targeting Lucy and her son. They're innocent. Anyone could claim innocence, but not those benefiting from this. I used to keep mum about their dirty laundry because of pride. Now that Nick's gone, I'd rather they, Henry and Lucy, were too. I called Henry with a cold tone. Don't worry, Henry, you're involved too. None of you are getting away. Do you really have to be like this? Yes. You're so aggressive now, Ella. I barely recognize you. What a coincidence, Henry. I feel like I've never truly known you. If I knew he was this oblivious, I wouldn't have married him. Then my kid wouldn't have to be told every day that he's not as sensible as Lucas. He wouldn't feel inferior and sensitive, nor would he be crushed when disappointed. Larry worked quickly, and the court ruled that Lucy had to pay me back $1.85 million. But like Larry said from the start, I didn't have concrete evidence of Henry's cheating. The court didn't find the marriage irreparably broken, so no divorce was granted. Henry wasn't happy about me pressuring Lucy to repay the money. He wanted to borrow money to pay her back himself, but I refused. I had Larry tell him, Henry, if you want to support your mistress and her kid, I'm not stopping you. We'll get a divorce, and post-divorce you can do whatever you want. But right now, any loan you take is our joint debt, and I'm not agreeing to it. I thought Henry would agree easily. He cares so much about Lucy and her kid. How could he bear to watch them suffer? But I was wrong. Henry wanted to meet and talk to me, but I declined. Larry came back and told me Henry refuses to divorce. He thinks your relationship is just fine. He believes you're just misunderstanding him and are upset at the moment. I've realized I really don't know Henry. He's all about Lucy and her kid now. He's become more impatient with me over the years, treating me worse than a stranger. I don't understand why he's still holding on. If Henry won't make things easy for me, I'm not going to be patient like before. He wants to drag this out? I'll make him beg for divorce later. The complaint letter has already reached the fire department, and it's been processed over the days. The discipline inspection department called saying they wanted to talk to me. I agreed. A whole group of them came over. Knowing I was recovering, they even brought some supplements. However, I didn't expect them to bring Henry along too. The leader spoke earnestly. Henry has already explained the situation to us. It's indeed his fault. Henry, come over here and seriously apologize to Ella. Henry looked thinner and had dark circles under his eyes. He walked up to me, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry, Ella. I promise this won't happen again. I clenched my hands tightly. You promise? What good is your promise? Nick is already gone. Can your apology bring him back? Henry, you didn't even show up for your son's funeral. You're truly heartless. Henry swallowed. The usually calm and composed man seemed utterly panicked. I'm sorry about Nick, but Lucas had a heart attack. He doesn't have a dad, and Lucy doesn't know much. I just couldn't leave. Is Lucy only surrounded by dead people? She's 35, not a 5-year-old. If you didn't want to attend the funeral, just say it. Aren't you tired of making excuses? I looked around, my voice trembling. Are you all here to speak for Henry? Can you even listen to his excuses? In the past, I stubbornly got paternity tests for Henry and Lucas several times, but they weren't father and son. Later, I realized there's a saying, love the house and its crow. Henry just loves Lucy that much. Everyone looked uncomfortable. The leader awkwardly spoke. Ella, calm down. I need to be honest with you. Henry is very capable. His superiors want to promote him, and he has unlimited potential for the future. You both are married. If you really report him, you'll ruin his future. I ignored the leader and just asked Henry, do you have the face to continue being a firefighter? Henry, if it had been anyone else doing the rescue that day, Nick wouldn't have died. While holding your lover and Lucas, did you know Nick was crying behind a door, calling out, Dad, it hurts so much? If someone else had gone, no one would have died. Not Nick, not Lucy and her kid. Henry's face went pale. He couldn't say a word and ran out, distraught. Through the window, I saw the sky was dark as if it were going to pour rain. The fire department called me the next day to inform me of Henry's punishment. A major demerit, demotion, and dismissal from his role as captain. I was feeling better and went to visit Nick's grave. He'd only been gone a month, but it felt like ages. Sometimes I dream of him crying at night, waking up, and I can't go back to sleep. Feeling every minute is unbearable. I didn't expect Henry to be there too. There were flowers, toys, a small cake, and snacks in front of Nick's tombstone. I walked over expressionless and kicked them all away. Henry frowned. Ella, whatever issues are between us, you can take it out on me. But don't act this way in front of Nick. He's my child too. But you brought what Lucas likes. Nick doesn't like sweets or these toys. I placed Lego, a Rubik's Cube, and Nick's favorite spicy snacks on the grave. Henry helplessly crouched down to help. I'm sorry. I just thought all kids like those things. If you don't care, stop pretending. Aren't you disgusted with yourself? He remembers Lucas's preferences but can't remember a single thing Nick liked. In the end, it's because he's just indifferent, Henry said bitterly. I just wanted to spend more time with Nick. I was too busy and spent too little time with him. But before Nick died, he told me he wants a different dad in the afterlife. Henry stumbled, his eyes slowly turning red. He knelt and kept apologizing to Nick, admitting he was wrong. But I just found it hypocritical. If you're really sorry, you should respect his wish and stay away from him. Henry wanted to say something, but then Lucy called him, and he got up right away. I looked up at him. The guilt, pain, and regret in his eyes disappeared, leaving only resentment. Ella, I've already said Lucy and her boy are innocent. If you must blame someone for Nick's death, blame me. It has nothing to do with Lucy and Lucas. You're a mom too. Why are you so harsh on another mom and her child? You won't even let them have a place to live. Lucy had Henry's backing, and she wouldn't pay me back even though she had money. I had Larry file for an enforcement order, and they managed to get Lucy and her son kicked out of their property. They were forced out of the house just this morning. Don't worry, I'm coming, Henry reassured Lucy anxiously before leaving. See, he doesn't actually think he's wrong. It's all just talk. As soon as Lucy and her son show up, he's all over me with blame. But Henry didn't just switch up all of a sudden. This was a long time coming. I remember when we first got together, I asked him, why would you risk your life to save someone you don't even know? He said it was his duty. But firefighters are people too. Aren't you afraid? He chuckled, saying it might have something to do with how he grew up. Later on, I found out Henry's dad was a firefighter too. He died in the line of duty when Henry was just 7. His mom wasn't in good health, had no job, and life was really tough for them. She passed away when he was 15. He managed to grow up safely and join the fire department thanks to the help from his dad's colleagues and other friends and family. Lucy's parents didn't want them together because of his tough background and the whole orphan thing. Henry never once complained about that. He said no one wants a hard life, so he got it. His mom used to tell him, we're doing this well because of the help we got from others. When you're older, help others as much as you can. Henry stayed optimistic and always helped people in need. He'd use most of what he earned to support them. I've got money, so I never relied on him financially. I always thought he was kind-hearted. That's what I loved most about him. But later it became what I hated most. Whenever Lucy and her son needed help, he would never turn them down. I went from calm to distressed to furious. Henry never got why I was angry. He just looked disappointed. He'd say stuff like, "I've helped other people before, and you never said anything. So why get all worked up over Lucy and her son? I've never crossed any lines with her. Can you please stop being unreasonable and jealous over nothing?" I snapped out of my thoughts after an hour with Nick. But then I saw Henry again while paying my respects and later ran into him and Lucy with her kid. Only they were upstairs and I was downstairs. A crowd of onlookers surrounded me. Lucy was holding her kid on the edge of the rooftop while Henry and the police tried to calm her down. They already had an air cushion ready and a fire truck standing by. Lucy saw me and screamed desperately, "Ella, do I really have to die for you to leave us alone?" My phone rang. Knowing I blocked him, Henry borrowed someone else's phone to call me. He pleaded, "Please don't rile her up. They've been through enough. If you're mad, take it out on me." I nearly shouted, "Feel sorry for them? Did you know during the fire they knew Nick and I were next door but didn't warn you?" Henry froze, almost panicking. "No way. Lucy's a good person. She wouldn't do that. People blinded by their beliefs never see the truth." I hung up and yelled to Lucy, "Aren't you gonna jump? Go ahead. If you can't let your kid jump, maybe you can jump." Cops and firefighters rushed at me trying to stop me and the crowd stared, criticizing. I was about to scream when someone handed me a megaphone. It was Larry. He shrugged. "Screaming's bad for your voice. Don't want your brother worrying." He reminded me he'd been adamant about keeping me safe. I took the megaphone. "What's everyone worried about? Lucy never planned to jump. Does she look like she's gonna actually do it?" Everyone looked at Lucy on the rooftop, silent. Larry nudged me to stand on something so everyone could see. I hesitated but climbed up. Don't mind the gossip, but the woman shouting is my husband's mistress, and that handsome man back there is my husband. He transferred $185,000 to her while we were married. I sued her, but she won't pay back. If their house gets auctioned, she pulls this stunt hoping public pressure gets me to cave. She's shameless. Isn't this a waste of fire department resources? Crowd members murmured in sympathy, saying things like, "The wife's the real victim here. What a deceitful pair." Larry helped me down, worried I'd fall, then drove me home. Lucy dragged this drama into the spotlight, hitting the news headlines. Soon enough, the media uncovered what went down during the fire. On the 15th at the Rose Hotel fire, Henry led the team, but for personal reasons, he disrupted the rescue process to save his ex, Lucy, and her son first. He didn't follow the proper rescue procedures, delaying help, which led to a 5-year-old boy's death and seriously injured a woman. In a tragic twist, Henry's child was the boy who died, and the woman was his wife. Their room was next to his ex's. Henry and Lucy got slammed on social media. She tried renting a place, but landlords recognized her and refused. As for Henry, people are livid about him. If he wouldn't even save his own son, how can anyone trust him with the duty to save others? Henry attempted to reach out to me multiple times but failed. Eventually, he got a lawyer to start the divorce process. Larry's handling my divorce, coordinating with the other lawyer. He told me Henry left a message through his attorney. On the day of the fire, Lucy was just too panicked and forgot you and Nick were next door. He's disappointed you'd push things without getting facts straight. So he's decided to divorce you. Is he just too gullible, easily fooled by Lucy? Or is he unwilling to face the truth that he helped someone with bad intentions, leading to his son's death? I don't really get it, and honestly I don't have the energy to dig any deeper. When I loved him, I racked my brain to find excuses for him, desperately looking for any tiny proof that he loved me and Nick. But now none of that matters. Larry, let's go talk to Henry about the divorce. We should file the papers today and have the discussion at my place. Right after Nick passed, I couldn't even go home. I was afraid that being in a familiar space would make me lose it. Plus, I couldn't stand being under the same roof as Henry anymore. Now that I'm set on leaving him, I know I want to keep the house filled with memories of Nick. I'll make Henry pack his things and leave. Larry gave the other lawyer a heads up, then drove me over. When we got to the house, the lawyer called and said it was better to meet at a cafe. I just want to get this divorce over with, so I agreed quickly. But since we were already at the house, I decided to grab Nick's favorite Lego set. I planned to take it to his grave once the divorce stuff was settled. When I tried to enter, the code wouldn't work. I tried twice and got it wrong each time. Then suddenly, I heard a familiar woman's voice from inside. "Who's there?" The door opened, and there was Lucy in her pajamas with Lucas behind her. He was also in casual homewear. The living room looked different now, clearly set up for them to stay. This was my and Henry's marital home. We weren't even divorced yet, and he had let another woman stay here with her kid. What did he think this place was? Blood rushed to my head. Everything got blurry. Lucy tried to close the door quickly. Larry clicked his tongue impatiently and kicked the door open. "You can't come in." Lucy hesitated, trying to block me. "Get out of my way." I shoved past her, storming inside. Seeing the bedroom all new with no trace of Nick left broke me. Nick's clothes, shoes, toys, photos, where were they? Grabbing Lucy by the collar, I was on the brink of an emotional breakdown. Her eyes darted everywhere. "Mom said keeping a dead person's stuff around is bad luck, so she threw it all out," Lucas piped up. That snapped the last string of sanity in my mind. I screamed, grabbed Lucy by the hair, and slapped her hard across the face. She fell to the floor and I jumped on her, wanting to make her pay. Why? Why did she have to erase even the last traces of my child who was already gone? Henry always claimed she and her son were innocent, but what about Nick and me? Did we deserve this? "Stop it, Ella. What are you doing? Keep this up and I'll call the cops." Henry ran in furious, helping Lucy without even asking what happened, just like always. He tried to pull me away, but Larry blocked him. Larry smirked at Henry. "Mr. Henry, let the women sort this out. It's not your place." Larry might have looked slender, but he was a national kickboxing champ. Henry couldn't budge him, and worried about Lucy, he opted to call the police. "Ella, Lucy being soft-hearted isn't an excuse for you to bully her. Last time you hit her, she let it go. But instead of learning, you got worse. I understand losing a child is painful, but don't take it out on innocent people." I slapped him hard. "Henry, I've never met anyone more contemptible than you." When the cops arrived, I let Larry handle it with a professional lawyer. Lucy wasn't even seriously injured, so I only needed to pay a few $1,000s in compensation. I told Larry to hit the nearest ATM, then threw the cash at Lucy's swollen face. "I've compensated you. Now let's talk about your illegal entry into my home." Lucy sobbed. Henry stood protectively in front of her, frowning. "I allowed her in. You seem to forget I'm the homeowner." Despite his family's financial struggles, Henry never cared much since marrying me. Our place and car were my purchases. Realizing he was wrong, he went quiet. "You don't have to be so harsh. Did you forget you're the one who called the cops, Henry? You guys took Nick from me and threw away his things, erasing every trace. But I am the unreasonable one? You're the ones twisting the narrative." Henry looked at Lucy, shocked. "Did you toss Nick's stuff? I told you not to mess with anything here." Lucy sobbed even louder. I listened, irritated. Tossing Nick's things meant losing at least $500,000 worth. Illegal entry, property damage, they were serious charges. I had no time to waste on them and left. Henry followed, panicked. "Imsuri, ella." I avoided suspicion and left after she moved in. I didn't know. I slapped him again. "Henry, you'd better pray I find Nick's stuff. Otherwise, I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me." My brother had already reached out to people at the dump and hired extra hands to look for Nick's belongings. Larry and I rushed over, Henry tagging along. "You're not well, Ella. Get some rest and I'll find it." I ignored him, took the gloves Larry handed me, and started combing through the piles of trash looking for Nick's things. Henry just stood there, unsure. What exactly am I looking for? In Nick's early years, Lucy wasn't around, so Henry had taken good care of our kid. Diapers, baby food, it was all him, and Nick adored him. People used to say I was lucky. But since Lucy appeared, Henry was either at work or at her place. He could rant for minutes about Lucas, but didn't know a thing about Nick's life or preferences. I kept searching silently. Henry awkwardly went around asking people questions, and they showed him some photos. In the 90-something degree summer heat, you can imagine how bad the trash mountain smelled. Henry was looking everywhere, working tirelessly. He didn't even take a break at noon or eat or drink, and he passed out from heatstroke on the trash pile. An ambulance took him away, but once he regained consciousness, he rushed back, gritting his teeth and digging through the trash. From the lawyer's side, there was a question. "Miss Ella, this Miss Lucy wants to talk to you. She says that as long as she doesn't go to jail, she's willing to make any financial compensation for the losses she caused you. You tell her that she and her son should go kneel at my son's grave. When they find all of Nick's things, every single one, then they can get up. If she agrees to that, I won't prosecute her." I hung up the phone. Henry frowned and said, "Lucy went too far this time, but she's in poor health and Lucas has a congenital heart disease, so they—" I cut him off. "You can go kneel with them too, otherwise I'll make sure she goes to jail. As for my son's things, he doesn't need you to search for them. You missed 2 years of Nick's life, and now Nick doesn't need you at all." I shoved Henry aside and kept searching through the trash. Larry would tell me every day about Henry and those two. I meant what I said, they kneel day and night. It's their choice. Who cares if their bodies can handle it? The little bit of hardship they suffer doesn't compare to a tenth of Nick's pain. It took a full 2 days to find everything. I didn't care how dirty it was. I hugged it all to me with joy and tears streaming down my face. Larry patted my shoulder. "Come on, let's go home. Nick would be worried if he saw you like this." At home, everything felt strange and it made me sick. I had everything thrown out to the trash pile. Henry and Lucy, along with her son, knelt for 2 whole days and nights. Even if it wasn't very proper kneeling, their bodies couldn't take it, and they all walked unsteadily. You threw my stuff away? Henry." Lucy's voice quivered with tears. Annoyed by her crying, I grabbed a picture frame and threw it at her. "Even if a few $1,000s means hitting you once, I can afford that price. Even if Lucy didn't accept the settlement, the worst would be a few days locked up, and I could handle that outcome." Lucy gasped like a duck with its throat caught, but she didn't dare cry anymore. She just looked at Henry with teary eyes. Henry looked at me with a complicated expression. "We've done what you asked. Can you withdraw the charges now?" "Of course," as Lucy smiled, I continued. "But Henry, I've changed my mind. I'm not getting divorced. I'll wait it out and teach you all what true harassment and deliberate targeting looks like. Henry shouldn't think he can take divorce money from me to support Lucy and her son. None of them will have a good time." After throwing out Lucy's stuff, I tossed out all of Henry's things too and changed the house's lock code. "Henry, you borrowed a total of $200,000 from me during the marriage, and you promised to repay me with your salary. If you can afford to say you'll pay off Lucy's $185,000, don't drag out repaying me on purpose." Henry, being competitive, became as accomplished as he was. Similarly, he couldn't stand being provoked. Even though Lucy tried to stop him from paying the money back, he still transferred it to me. That was all the ready cash he had at his disposal. Henry looked a bit awkward. "If you hate me, just take it out on me. I deserve it." But the most Lucy and her kid ever did was accept my help. They've done nothing wrong. I led Larry into the house and shut the door with a bang. There's nothing to say to someone not thinking clearly. About those interviews about the fire, should they still come? Larry asked me. Yeah, why not? When someone first revealed the truth about the fire, I didn't do any interviews to save Henry's face. Many online guessed maybe he had his reasons. How could someone ignore their own son? But if he doesn't care, why should I? Before the interview happened though, Henry called urgently. "Where's Nick's grave? Anyway, you didn't treat him like a son when he was alive, so don't go dirtying his path in the afterlife now that he's gone. I'm not letting you see him anymore. I've moved Nick's ashes in tombstone. Nick doesn't want this dad anymore, so I had to fulfill his last wish." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it," Henry said, sounding bitter. I smiled, but not really. No need to regret so soon. This is just the start. That afternoon, the reporters came and I spoke truthfully to the camera. I had told my husband where our child and I lived, but he blocked me and didn't answer our calls because he was busy working, busy with Lucy and her son, fearing we'd disturb them. When he rescued those two, he passed by our room. "My son, Nick kept calling for his dad, but he worried about a blister or two on the kids' burns, rushing to get them out, and without checking other rooms, he told the rescue team there were no more people trapped. Delaying the golden rescue time cost my son Nick his life. Remembering how Nick lay in my arms broke my voice several times as I spoke. The video uploaded and caused a huge stir again. The fire department, considering the negative impact Henry caused, suspended him. I made a group chat with all mutual acquaintances. This is Ella, Henry's wife. Sorry for any disturbance. Given all the recent mess in our home, I need to clear the air. If Henry borrows money from you all, it's to support Lucy and her son. I won't shoulder those debts personally. He doesn't have savings or other assets, just his monthly salary to pay off debts. Please consider carefully before lending money. The thought of using my money to support Henry for Lucy and her son? Only a fool would pay that back for him. I'm not just worrying for nothing. He's done it before, borrowing money to buy a house for Lucy and her kid. Thinking about how Henry might not be able to repay, most wouldn't lend to him. But some might, since he's helped plenty in the past. When Henry helped Lucy and her son find a place to rent, I had someone find out the address. Once they moved in, I hired some troublemakers to throw a stink bomb, graffiti with blood-like paint, hang banners and toss rotten veggies. Henry and Lucy called the cops to catch those guys. It's cool though, it's just disturbing the peace. They'd only be locked up for a few days and then be back at it. If not them, then I'd just find a new crew. As long as I've got cash, plenty are willing to help me out. If Henry and Lucy can't handle it and move again, I'd have people find the new place and repeat the process. Larry would gather evidence on how much Henry was spending on Lucy and her kid, filing for recovery of our shared assets every week. If Lucy can't pay back, it's no problem. She has a car that could be sold at auction. No car? No biggie, we'd freeze her bank account instead. If Henry and Lucy aren't embarrassed by this, why should I be bothered? Back then, when I just mentioned something, Henry would accuse me of singling out Lucy and picking on them. I wasn't about to take that blame for nothing. Larry usually deals with cases worth billions, so doing this small stuff for me isn't really using his skills. I suggested he get another attorney on it. Larry said, "Your brother and sister-in-law feel bad enough for not looking out for their nephew. They can't let anyone bully you. If I wash my hands of this, they'd flay me alive. I needed a break anyway, so I'm here for a change of pace." All this lasted about a month before Lucy couldn't take it anymore. Mainly because her son has a heart condition. After a few scares, it was nearly fatal, and she couldn't even cover the medical bills. Henry confronted me. "Aren't you afraid of causing a death with all this?" I laughed. "Why should I be?" Henry didn't expect my answer. "Death isn't a joke. You'd end up in jail. Jail would be the same for me with or without Nick. I'm just having people harass Lucy. If her son gets scared to death, it's hardly my fault. Worst case, I'm looking at a couple of years or paying damages, maybe not even jail time. To make Henry and Lucy miserable for life? Worth it." Henry looked at me darkly. "Ella, how did you become like this?" I shot back. "Didn't you force me to be? He took my child away. I can't move on and feel awful. Why do they get to live happily?" Henry opened his mouth but didn't speak, only looked pained as he walked away. Lucy came crying to seek peace behind his back. I arranged to meet her at a cafe. Lucy looked much older, jealousy in her eyes. "I really am jealous of you, Ella. You're pretty capable, have a good family, and married well. Unlike me, my parents pressured me into marrying an older, abusive man just to get a hefty bride price. They ruined my life." I sipped my coffee. "I'm not here to hear your sob story. Her parents wronged her, not me. I'm not Henry. Just because she pleads, I won't forgive her." Lucy smiled wryly. "I've held this in for long. Since middle school I've liked Henry. When I first divorced and returned, I worried he'd resent me for marrying another. But he treated me kindly. I wondered if, like me, he still had feelings. Each time I stirred things up, watching him get upset with you over what I said, it made me happy. But so many years have passed. Truth is, Henry helped Lucas and me out of sympathy. He never crossed any lines. I did try to seduce him, but he never took the bait. Now Henry and I are paying the price. I'm leaving, so quit giving him a hard time. He's grieving your child too. It's been tough on him." She rambled on about her feelings. I didn't respond right away, just fidgeted with my phone. A message popped up on Lucy's phone. Her face changed when she saw it because I sent the video to all my contacts, including her and Henry. You didn't think some soft words would make me stop, did you? No matter how regrettable her situation, it gives her no right to make Nick and me suffer. Lucy's face drained of color. She dropped into a chair. I left without a glance back. She made my child miserable for 2 years, so it's only fair I respond in kind for just as long. Whether her son's heart problems get worse or he develops trauma or she has nightmares isn't my problem. I just wondered how Henry would react to that video. I went home, but I didn't expect Henry to be waiting at my door. Both he and Lucy, after dealing with harassers and their troubles, looked worn out. And he must have seen the video I sent. He looked like he'd been through something major, reeking of alcohol, his eyes all red, kind of like a homeless guy. When he saw me, Henry came over eager and sincere. Ella, you gotta believe me, I didn't know Lucy thought that. I just thought your brother treats you well. You've got lots of friends and you're capable. Her parents are just gold diggers trying to bleed her dry. They've been awful to her. She's divorced. Raising a kid is hard. I thought she needed me more and just wanted to help her. No hidden motives. I haven't wronged you at all. I'll cut ties with her. Do whatever you say, just give me another chance, will ya? Henry was talking fast, like he was scared I'd throw him out before he finished. Since we started dating, he took the lead and I was the one revolving around him. It's his first time being this humble. I didn't hesitate much and nodded. Okay, what did you say? Henry stared at me blankly. She said okay. If you can't hear right, go see an ENT. You're young. Maybe it can be treated. Larry swung the car door open, getting out, and teasingly said, listening to you guys talk so much made me thirsty. Ella, how about inviting me in for a drink? Sure. I smiled at him and walked inside with him. Henry, trying to hide his joy, quickly followed and poured water for Larry and me. It was only 2 in the afternoon. I took a sip from my glass. Larry, these days you've been busy helping me. Why not stay for dinner tonight? Henry's a good cook. You should try his food. Larry chuckled. You gotta ask him. Mr. Henry, do you mind? Henry replied, I don't mind. We're out of groceries, so you'll have to make a run. Larry and I are tired. We won't accompany you. Without lifting my head, I said to Larry, I notice you always wear the same tie. Picked up a few for you. We'll drop them off in a couple of days. Matching cufflinks too. Larry joked. Usually girlfriends buy those. You buying them for me? Is that okay? You're my brother's good friend. Kinda like siblings. Nothing wrong with getting you a few things. By the way, you mentioned a headache. I'm free now. Let me give you a massage. I stood up, walked behind Larry and started rubbing his head. Lean on me, it's easier this way. Larry raised an eyebrow. Your husband's right here. Isn't this? What's the big deal? We're innocent. Only dirty minds would think otherwise. He didn't argue, resting his head against me right below my chest in a spot that might raise eyebrows. Henry stood nearby, his face showing a whirlwind of emotions, wanting to speak but holding back, much like I used to be. Looking at him, my smile faded. If you don't want to cook, just say so. Larry and I can eat out. We don't mind spending on a meal. Henry's eyes dimmed. It's fine. I'll go. He took 4.5 hours shopping and cooking. When he finished, I went to check it out. Too bland. Larry doesn't like this. Eat at home. We'll find a restaurant. Ignoring Henry's darkened expression, I called Larry, wrapped my arm around him, chatting and laughing as we left. When we got back that night, Henry had tidied up the place just like when we first got married. It was late, and since we had extra rooms, I suggested Larry stay over. Larry patted my head. Our Ella's grown up, being so considerate. I playfully nestled into his arms, holding his neck. Of course Larry treats me well, so naturally I care for you too. Henry's silence so far couldn't hold it in. Ella, are you getting back at me? He sounded frantic and hurt. Maybe the past me would have felt for him, but now I felt nothing. Getting back at you? You're overthinking. I'm just having him stay since driving at night is unsafe. Why do you make such a big deal? Grumbling, I stopped paying him heed and cozied up with Larry, asking him to watch a show with me. Henry never watched dramas, just the news. When I shared with him, he'd just grunt. Larry was different. Handling divorce cases, he shared juicy stories from his work, much more engaging. We chatted eagerly, making it hard for Henry to join in. When he tried, we mostly ignored him. At bedtime, Henry headed to the master bedroom early. I picked a sexy nightgown and stepped out. "Where are you going?" Henry frowned. "Larry's a light sleeper. Just giving him a massage." "Wearing that? You're a woman. He's an adult man. Isn't that inappropriate?" "Henry, we're just like siblings. Don't be jealous without reason." Today's events all echoed past ones. Henry and Lucy had similar talks before. I was just returning the favor. No biggie, I thought. Henry, with his stubbornness, would hold out a month or two. But in just 2 days he cracked. When Henry came with divorce papers, he looked worn out with panda eyes. "Sorry for the hurt I've caused you and Nick." I always thought. I just took one look and quickly signed the divorce papers, then went to file the application. After the cooling-off period, we got our divorce certificate. Henry, who used to never touch a drop of alcohol, now drinks all day. He looks so defeated and messy, a shadow of his former self. From the time we met until now, he saved my life once and then took my son's life. Now I've had my revenge, but seeing him so downtrodden doesn't bring me any joy. Just a feeling of suffocation. We used to be a happy family of 3 once upon a time. I didn't say anything, just turned around and got into the car. Lucy with Lucas is harassed daily by people I arranged, living a miserable life. Yet Nick's death still weighs heavily on my heart, keeping me awake at night and making it hard to focus on work. Maybe someday I'll let go of Nick and start a new journey. Epilogue. Meeting Ella after saving her was an accident. She's beautiful, capable, and gentle, making it easy for anyone to fall for her. I didn't plan to get close to this rich lady at first, but Ella showed up. We got married. That time felt like a dream whenever I think about it. But that only lasted the first couple of years. Gradually, something changed. Sometimes when I went out to help people, acquaintances would tease me. "Henry must be spending all his money on others, huh? What's he using to support his wife and kid?" Anyone else would worry about that. But Ella's family has money and she earns well too. She lets Henry do good deeds. Colleagues chatting about life's pressures bring up my name. I envy Henry marrying a good wife. No worries about mortgages or loans. I wish I could be carefree like Henry. Or if only I looked as good as Henry, I wouldn't have to worry. Henry does all the housework and cooks great meals for his wife. Can you do that? Teasing like that is constant. I know I shouldn't take it to heart, but it feels weird facing Ella each time. When I'm worried about helping someone but don't have enough money, Ella would laugh and say, "Why are you worrying? Tell me if you need money. I've got it." She was just trying to help. I used to feel happy about it, but later it left an indescribable feeling, especially when visiting Ella's family. My brother-in-law often had talks with me. "I understand you want to help, but not everyone can be helped. Not even Ella's family. Henry, helping others within your means is good, but beyond that, it's a burden. You're married now. Consider your family. Don't rely just on Ella." Others have told me similar things, but hearing it from him felt humiliating. I tried not helping others, but tossing and turning in bed felt wrong. I tried making more money, but I'm just a firefighter lacking other skills. Even after coming home from work, I did all the housework and cooked Ella's favorite dishes, yet things felt different. When Nick was 3, life was extremely tough until Lucy came back, battered, holding Lucas and asking for my help. Ella is beautiful, strong, and independent, handling everything herself. I felt like an unnecessary addition. But Lucy was different, weak, teary, and clueless. She needed someone for everything. Taking care of her, and Lucas occupied all my time and eased my anxiety. But then Ella suddenly started fighting with me. I didn't understand. I helped Lucy like I helped others. Why was Ella so particular? I told her many times I had no unfaithful thoughts towards Lucy, nor did I do anything to betray her. I knew Lucy tried to flirt with me, but I saw it as a lack of security on her part. As long as I didn't cross the line and stayed faithful, it was okay. I lived like that for 2 years until Nick's death made Ella erupt. Perhaps she tolerated me too much before. And that moment made me realize she could also be angry and disappointed, and could choose to leave. Knowing Nick died because of my mistake haunted my nights with nightmares. Yet I believed there was still hope with Ella since I hadn't cheated. But seeing her with Larry at our home for those 2 days shattered that illusion. Hurting someone doesn't always need infidelity. Such a life was unbearable for even one day. So how did she endure it for 2 whole years? I started loathing myself and began to regret. But no matter what, Nick was gone, and Ella and I were impossible. Seeing fire reminds me of Nick, his cries for help. I developed a phobia and resigned. I wanted to do something for Nick, like volunteering to teach as good karma for him. During 10 years in the mountains, I lost a leg trying to save a trafficked woman. I have no regrets, but I regret saving so many yet failing my own son and marriage. I heard Lucy and Lucas were harassed by thugs for 2 years until Ella stopped it. But Lucy started seeing another man whose wife, Fierce, caused Lucas a fatal heart attack. Lucy blinded the woman in one eye and ended up jailed. In the 11th year, Ella was getting remarried. Her fiancé was not Larry, but someone I'd never met. I took a half-month leave, traveled overnight, wanting to attend her wedding. She's finally starting anew, and I must bless her. After 58 hours on the road, I was fortunate to see Ella as I arrived in the city. She was laughing with a handsome man who playfully tapped her nose, eyes filled with warmth and love. Ella! I hurriedly called her name, but I was too far. She didn't hear, getting into the car with the man. I tried to run, never hating my limp more. Suddenly, a car came out of nowhere, hitting me, and the ring box I was holding rolled away. I spent 10 years' savings on a diamond ring I was supposed to give to her when we married. I lifted my hand to retrieve the ring, but everywhere hurt, my hand, my leg. I couldn't move. Ella! I called her name, but the car started and vanished. Is this the same despair she felt pleading for help with Nick in the fire? Blood choked me as I coughed, vision fading to black. I'm going to see Nick now, hoping he's willing to see me and Ella have a happy marriage.